on the topic of track racing, I was told like years ago you get maybe hundreds of people to come out to a track event. I don't know if that's true or not, like spectators and not necessarily participants, but spectators. Um, did you ever attend these events?
Yes. Whenever they first made the track in Lisburn, that was about the 1950s or maybe the early, about 1950s I think. We had Reg Harris over, who was 5 times world champion. Mario Maratini, he was a famous Italian sprinter. Cyril Peacock and Ron Bench from Australia. All these great riders used to come over. Well, no, they wouldn't come over on a regular basis, but they have been over for track events. That's how popular it was in those days.
Okay, did you ever cycle on track yourself?
I have, but not an awful lot.
Okay.
I was mostly into road racing. But I did a little bit on the track, but it's hardly worth talking about.
Okay. How about the Orange Field track? Do you know much about that? Have you ever experienced
Yes.
cycling on the Orange Field track?
Yes. Now, we had the Lisburn track, and it was a good track. I don't know why they wanted to have another track. They opened this track in Orangefield, which looked an awful lot nicer. The surface looked an awful lot nicer, but according to Morris Foster and some of the experts, they reckoned it was rolled wrongly. They reckoned that it should have been rolled this way by the rollers, but they reckon the rollers did it this way, which meant it's up and down, and it's a lot bumpier.
Okay.
And then the Lisburn track went into disrepair. People weren't using it and so on, and now it just doesn't exist, which is a pity because it was a smashing track.
Okay.
Orangefield looks nice and so on, and we're glad to have it, I suppose, but I think Lisburn track was a better one.
And apparently you're saying on Tuesday nights, people still meet on Tuesday nights?
Yes, the track has been, it went into decline for a while, but it's been revived again, and a fellow called Brian Nugent is the track organiser, and it's getting very popular now. As a matter of fact, it's getting popular all over Ireland because we've had the Irish road champion suddenly became interested in tracks and turned out to be a great track rider, and he finished in the finals of the World Championship this year in Mallorca, in Palma.
Okay.
David O'Loughlin is his name.
All right, when you talk about championships, do you mean like Olympics?
No, the World, it's not the Olympics, it's known as the World Championship. The finals that there was heats in Moscow, there was heats in Canada, there was heats in Germany and so on, and the final, it was whittled down, and the final was in Palma in April. We were there to see it. And David O'Loughlin, Irish fella, who only started the track in recent times, reached the final, so there should be a great future for him in track racing.
Okay. There's a film about Graham Aubrey. I'm sure you've heard of Graham Aubrey. He's like a bike builder and racer himself.
Yes.
And have you ever met him?
Yes, I've met Graham Aubrey. He's raced here a few times. He came over to ride the time trials here in Newton Ards. He's a good friend of Bobby McGreechan, and Bobby is one of the top organisers in the Bangor region. And Bobby organised this. He had Chris Boardman over at the same time as well. So that was a great coup for Bobby, getting those two guys riding the same race. Boardman won it by half a minute or something.
The time trials, were they on a track or were they...
No, they're on the road. They're on the road from Newton Ards to Kirkcudbright.
Okay.
That was a 25-mile circuit too, very technical. Corners and bends, hills and so on.
Okay. With track racing, I understand there's several cyclists at the same time, but do they do trials as well where only one person goes? Where they only have one person? Like I understand Graham Aubrey won some competition where he did 1 hour. How many laps he could do in an hour?
Yes, he held the world hour record for a while, as did Chris Boardman as well. So there's lots of disciplines on the track. You have, first of all, you have the sprints, where you have a series, maybe say there's 30 or 40 riders, that would be 10 heats with 4 riders in each, and then it'd be whittled down to the final. The winners of each heat would have a go at at each other until it's whittled down to a final.
I see.
Then you have a 10-mile race where there are a whole crowd around together and they're all riding, and the first man home's the winner. Or it can be points. They can have sprints every few laps, and the guy who accumulates the most points will be the winner. Not necessarily the guy who crosses the line at the end.
I see.
And then you have a thing called Devil Take the Hindmost, where the whole crowd go in and there's a sprint every lap, and the last person drops out each lap until there's only 2 guys left. And then pursuits, of course, where one guy starts at one side of the track and the other guy starts at the other side of the track, and they ride for 4,000 metres, and they're trying to catch each other. So the guy who, they don't necessarily catch each other, although that does happen, but the guy obviously who reaches his line before the other guy reaches his line at the finish, he's the winner. In other words, the guy with the fastest time for the 4,000 metres.
How many bikes do you keep built? Have you kept number?
Well, I was a frame builder really. Like, I would build frames for people, although some of them would ask me to build bikes as well. But I reckon I've built maybe, I suppose you could say maybe 50 to 70 perhaps.
Okay.
But I'm not a professional builder. I mean, to me it was just started off as a hobby or for the kids in the cycling club. But people came around and asked me to build frames because in those days frames were harder to get.
Right. Are any of your frames overseas?
Funny enough, there's a guy, Davy McCall, who runs Sport Active. That's the holiday training camps in Mallorca. He said he came out of the airport one time in Madrid, and there was a Rafter bike sitting there.
Okay.
So he didn't know who owned it. He just was sitting there with saddlebags on it.
Interesting. So someone's using it as a touring bike.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
I don't know who owns it, but Davy McCall says there was a Rafter bike when he came out of the airport.
A friend of mine said that you'll see Eddy Rafter bikes on the road sometimes, and I don't know how popular they are, but apparently there's people still using them on the roads here in Belfast.
Nowadays, you see, the production line's producing frames an awful lot cheaper.
Right.
You know, all the carbon fibre and aluminium and so on and titanium. And racing men simply do not ride steel frames anymore. They're just a thing of the past.
Apparently Giant, I was told that they have a factory the size of Belfast. Now that sounds hard to believe, but they have like a huge factory, and Giant, they are, like, all bikes are built there, specialized, and like they just have this giant factory, and they take requests from all these different companies to build the bikes, and they're all made in the same factory.
That's true. That's true. Most of those bikes, like Trek and so on, and nearly all those bikes are made in Taiwan, and the workmanship is magnificent.
And those computer whatever jigs that they
CAD
use,
and all the rest of it.
they do pretty clean welds. Like, I was always inspired by
beautiful workmanship.
By welds. And
there are still some made in America. Cannondale, for instance, still make theirs, and Scott still make theirs in America. But most of the bikes in the world are made in Taiwan.
Okay. How about Hetchins? Can you tell us what you know about Hetchins? Am I saying that right?
Well, Hetchins would be one of the most famous of the English hand-built frames, and he was particularly famous for the beautiful lug work that he did. He wasn't just simply interested in making a bicycle frame, he wanted to put his art into it as well. The founder was Hiram Hetchins, 1933 he started, and his frames were absolutely beautiful. And then he worked out this curly stays business. His theory was if you had a curve in forks in the front for shock absorption, why not have curves in the back for shock absorption? So he worked out this curly stays, and they're brought after now by collectors. The Hetchins curly stays with the beautiful lugs and so on to match.
Okay, you said he was doing this many years ago, and now there's companies today that have adopted this technique.
Yes, in the middle years, say 70s and 80s, people used to poo-poo this system of Mr. Hetchins. He says, it's only the collectors are going for it just because it's a collector's piece. But now I see Pinarello are doing that as well. Pinarello have curly stays at the back because people have been complaining about modern frames being too rigid. So obviously the frame makers are taking this into consideration, and they've now experimented with curly stays as well.
Okay, great. Can you show us an example anywhere, like perhaps that picture you were showing me earlier?
Well, that's the only example I could show you, but I doubt if you could pick it up on your camera.
Yeah.
You can see here the curly stays, right?
Okay.
There, and also here.
Great.
This is a Hetchins from 1948, a track bike, specially made for the Wembley 6 Day. And this is Mr. Hiram Hetchins himself.
Okay.
An eccentric gentleman, as you can see, with his tweed suit and tweed overcoat and so on.
Right.
Looking very proudly at his bicycle.
You said he was a lover of art as much as he was of bicycles.
Yeah, of course, yeah.